What does an ADHD entrepreneur look like, sound like, act like? Do they have tells? Can you tell people you have an ADHD brain? Well, today I got a friend of mine, Blake Eastman, who's the founder of Nonverbal Group. He teaches people and machines to read human behavior and helps people navigate the complexity of social interactions. And he's here to talk today about the nonverbals of ADHD. Blake, welcome again.
Great for having me.
Um, we were chatting a couple months ago, and you mentioned something about there's nonverbals of ADHD, and I think you're the right person to talk about this since you've got the nonverbal group. Maybe give a little more explanation of what the nonverbal group is and what you do, so we can get started into this nonverbals of ADHD.
Yeah, so we're a behavioral research company that optimizes human communication but accounting for the levels of complexity. So there's just a lot of basic stuff out there that doesn't work, and we just look at things from a more holistic picture. So, if you probably Google ADHD advice for nonverbal behavior, it's probably not going to be so good because it doesn't account for the complexity.
Right. And you go a lot deeper than just the surface level stuff that we see out here
Yeah.
in the mainstream behavioral analysis, or not analysis, but you know what I mean. So what did you mean by nonverbals of ADHD? Is that a behavioral aspect or is
Yeah,
it
I mean,
tells?
there's a lot of there's a there's a lot to say. So there's two things, right? There's one, the fact that people with ADHD can have like nonverbal learning processing issues. So some of them
Right.
just can't read faces or can't understand. There's a deficit there sometimes. Um, and then the other aspect of it is when you have something like ADHD and if you're processing things different, it can create behaviors that look different that result in people having a different perception about you. So for example, like eye contact being one of them, like
Yeah.
somebody that's just jumping around or fidgeting or constant movement or jumping from task to task. Like there's so many things that will maybe change the perception of you and that causes problems in work and relationship context.
And those are societal rules, right? The current rules that's being measured here. It's not necessarily
Yeah,
that we
I wouldn't
suck
say
or
that
don't.
they're rules, they're more norms.
Okay,
So
yeah, I
it's
like
like,
that.
they're just we look at behavior on this sort of bell curve distribution where if we see people acting a certain way, that becomes our normal, and if we see someone acting outside of that, that's abnormal.
Yeah. So, and is it based on your research? Is that like how much of these norms are a valid scientific fact, or is it just the way society is set up?
Yeah, they're not it's really not a lot of science to it. I mean, the science to it has to deal with like the science of perception, as opposed to X means Y or anything like that, right? It's just people go through life, they have these feedback loops of experiences, and then they fall into distribution. So, you go to a dinner with someone, everybody has their own unique model of what ideal eye contact or what the amount of eye contact looks like in that dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And some people have more of it or less of it. Maybe more of it, they think you're creepy, and less of it, they think you're not paying attention. But the truth is, you're paying full attention. You're just you don't have good gaze direction or eye contact.
Like I know, like just an example of the eye contact. The what for me, if I very rarely at home, eye contact is usually I got one of my ears turned to the speaker, and that's so I can focus more on the conversation or hear better. Or if I'm really intrigued, I gotta have a fidget thing so I can focus more, and I can't maintain eye contact. So, it really depends on who you are and how you work, and not
Yeah,
be
and
afraid of it.
the best thing to do is give people context. So if you don't
Yeah,
give people context for why you're doing something outside of a distribution, they'll create their own reason why.
their interpretations. Yeah.
Right? So if all of a sudden, I don't know, let's just say I'm at a meeting and I keep my gaze direction is, let's say I'm during on this podcast, I like look at you and I look away and I look at you and I look away. Look at
Hmm.
you. You might go, oh, well, Blake's not paying attention. But if I would have told you like, hey, like, I don't know, my family member's in the hospital and I'm waiting for a text message, you know the reason on why I could potentially be doing that. And I think a lot of people that suffer from these communication challenges don't relay the challenges. So
Yeah.
like I had one client that used to close his eyes while other people would speak. So like when someone would talk, he would like close his eyes and listen. but it just looked like he was disinterested. He didn't say like my way of focusing and paying
Yeah.
attention to what you're saying is closing my eyes, you know?
Yeah, and one of the technical committees I'm on, that's full of engineers and technical people. I got in trouble a couple times. I stood up in the room of 40 people was just yammering on and repeating the same things. I started to get up and just move a bit.
Mm,
And because I realized myself, if I sat there and I'm annoyed because I hate people repeating the same thing 20 different ways at the same time. Then my impulsive mouth starts shooting off. So I just start to walk around so I can control that, because when I
mm,
start feeling that edginess and I know it's gonna get, my impulsive verbiage is gonna get going, I get up and walk around.
mm.
And then I was called out on it in front of everyone, and I just told them, hey, if you want me to keep quiet while you guys are repeating all this stuff, I need to get up and move around.
Yeah, exactly. And then you just explain somebody the context you're going through, and then they have a reason why, and they're not
Yeah,
making their own reasons on why you're acting a certain way.
yeah, and it actually gave permission to other people to stand up and walk around, because one guy
Hmm.
came up and thanked me, he says, I'm glad you did that, because I got a bad back and knees, I need to walk around every 30
Yeah,
minutes, so.
exactly.
Is this, like, what I really like about this conversation is you're not saying there's anything wrong with these differences of the
No, it's just
societal
differences.
norms, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, how can someone better communicate or be comfortable? Like, the one thing I really teach my clients and people is, don't say that I have ADHD, I can't do this, or this is how it is try to use, like my example, if you want me to be quiet and not have impulsive remarks, then I need to walk around. It's not because I got an impulsive brain, ADHD, and I can't do this, or I need this, or my favorite is, since my working memory is shit, I can remember probably two or three things. So instead of I'm ADHD, I need you to do this for me. I say, hey, for me to remember properly, I need you to send me an email so I can remember. And I'm not
Yeah,
using the term ADHD.
that's exactly how I would do it. I would stay away from labels or terms or anything like that and just say like, listen, I'm really listening to what you say, but it helps me focus when I'm looking around in different directions. So I'm paying attention. It just may look like I'm not paying attention, but I hear every word you're saying, and this is just how I could pay better attention. Like, anything that you can do there is just going to help create the context that you want to create. So yeah, I totally agree with the what you just said.
And is, okay, so you're saying this is societal norms. Does the ADHD brain determine our behavior? Is it?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. But that
Because
behavior is different than societal norms.
yeah, it has to deal with it determines your behavior because if you think about ADHD through the lens of information processing, if you
Right.
process information differently, you're probably going to look different. So that's the compensating factor.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. Since we're processing information differently, we will behave and do things differently. Just
Yeah, which will
okay.
look strange maybe to people that don't have that context. So to you, this is just how you do things. To
Mhm.
them, they're like, why is this weirdo not looking at me? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then right now is I gotta write everything down because I can't forget. I even forget what I was writing down before, but no, I think I'm kind of spidering right now on that brain processing different creates different outcomes on that. So that's really cool. Um, what about the environment that you're in, or we're surrounded in, or you past, current? Does that affect your behavior as well?
Yeah, I'm sure it does. And also like there's all this optimizing. I mean, I know we've spoken about before, like I'm definitely on that ADHD spectrum and I spend a lot of time optimizing my environment.
Hmm.
I just have my environment plays a real big role in me in terms of like the work I get done and how I do things. Like, I mean, even I'll even try to like sit in certain seats at a restaurant because I know it'll be easier to focus. Like if me and you are go to dinner and let's say there's a seat facing the restaurant and there's a seat just facing you, I usually try to sit not facing the restaurant because everything that goes by, I'll kind of I have to fight
You
the
get
distraction,
distracted. Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
So instead of trying to fight the distraction, what I'll do is put myself in a situation where I'm less likely to be distracted.
Yeah, and that's what I kind of did with my office is I got no shelves, nothing that can, no books, nothing there that can distract me. Just what I'm working on right now is the only thing in this little office
Yeah,
is
yeah.
another tool. What kind of environment controls have you set up around your company? Like with you as being an entrepreneur?
I mean, really gotten really good at there's certain times in the calendar that are for extreme focus. So like right now, it changes every day based on my schedule, but there's usually a 3 hour block where I'm like, Blake, you're gonna you're gonna dial in here. And I've noticed that my focus tends to I've done a lot of actual my own research on myself. So I have like one 90-minute window every day. So like I can if a problem is challenging and complex and interesting to me, I can focus for 90 minutes. But my work starts to decrease considerably once it's 120 minutes. So I usually do
Oh,
like a 90-minute sprint, a 60-minute sprint, and a 45-minute sprint every single day. So if you really look at it, like, 90, 60, 45, I'm working like around 3 hours every day,
yeah.
right? Like it's not that. And what I used to do is try to fight it. I just wouldn't get work done.
Get that shit done.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't just get shit done. So I'm like, in a lot of ways, Blake working 2 hours and 45 minutes hyper focused is infinitely higher output than Blake working 10 hours.
Yeah, yeah, because what you're referring to is actually the hyper focus time. That's your
Hmm.
hyper focus time, and you're probably doing 12 hours equivalent work of society too. And
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say that to shit on or shoot down society. It's just I think that's the differences of our brain that a lot of people don't understand, and that
No,
it
I
really
had a
hyperflex.
I had somebody that worked for me that once saw me in these 90-minute sprints. They were in the same office as me, and they were just kind of like, "What the hell, dude? Like, how do you do?" Like, I wrote like 3,000 words in 90 minutes, and they were just like,
Yeah.
"How do you do that?" And I was like, "It's taken a long, it's been a 25-year journey to get to this, but yeah, it's better now."
Yeah, yeah, that reminds me of a story too with one of the other engineers. I did a big report on 3 hours, and he was amazed. And he came back and said that taken him what I would have taken him 4 days, and he
Yeah,
was
yeah.
right. And he was right. It was just to get compile the information. Yes, some of the experience helped me on this, but when you get dialed in, man, it really goes, and that confuses a lot of people.
Yeah, you
I don't
need
know,
to
and it almost
create those
puts people off
constraints.
too.
Yeah. Well, it's like that Parkinson's law, like the amount of time a task will take will expand to the amount of time you give it or whatever that law is. So it's
Yeah.
like if you give yourself 6 hours to complete something, you'll complete it in six. So if you give yourself three. So I've always had to work with constraints. Like I have to create constraints for myself or else things don't get done.
Well, that creates the urgency part of the interest-based nervous system. It's gotta be
Yeah.
challenging, novel, urgent, interesting, or passion related for us to
Yeah.
lock in.
And usually I'll set up like reward systems for myself. So like the only thing that ironically, there's two things that shut down my brain, and one is social interactions. I'm very present and connected in social interactions. Part of the reason is because they're very complex. And the second one is video games.
Mhm.
So like I will maybe today I'll do my sprint from 2:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. and then reward myself with playing like 90 minutes of, Cyberpunk
Yeah,
or whatever game I'm playing.
yeah, yeah. That rewarding thing has been tough for me to try and do. Try to figure out
Yeah,
what it is.
it took me a long, long, long time because I would never reward myself.
Yeah, and that's a common thing I'm hearing with a lot of ADHD entrepreneurs. I don't know if that's the way we're raised or the way we're the environment, but or we're just wired. But what other nonverbal recommendations would you have, or we should be aware of?
I think the first thing you should do is watch video of yourself.
Ooh,
So if you're on Zoom meetings or anything like that, you sort of want to most people you don't see yourself, right? It's not
yeah.
possible. So video is the only way that you can see yourself. And through video, you're able to understand sort of like, oh, what behaviors may look like I'm not interesting or look like I'm not paying attention. So I think it all starts there. And then being able to second hedge those behaviors by explaining why you're having them. And then finally working and putting steps and processes towards not eliminating them, which is always a bad
Mhm.
focus, but just reducing them.
Processes and systems to reduce. What was that? You said bad something, but I don't think that's what
Yeah,
you.
it's not. I'm saying that like it's really bad to say I'm going to eliminate a behavior
Okay,
because it's
okay,
just very hard to.
to reduce the impact of a behavior.
Yeah, so you just want to reduce the impact or slightly diminish it. So for example, if your gaze direction in a conversation is an average of 60, people are probably going to think you're maybe not paying attention or come up with some sort of reason why. If you increase the 60 to something like 75 to 80, it's going to be fine.
Right, that's a good point. So that now that you're aware of those differences, you can be more. I realized when I was starting to do the eye contact thing, I catch myself and then try to do more. I won't probably do as much as most people. At least be aware that I'm not doing it.
Right.
If it suit the purpose or the fidgeting even. I didn't realize I did that much fidgeting to the point I was
Yeah.
shaking vehicles. Like, but I like that. So you're not saying to change your behavior or to get rid of it. It's just understanding the impacts of the behavior and either you can explain
Exactly.
it or just to be aware of it, it is huge. I don't know. To use your restaurant analogy, sometimes I need to be facing TVs because if I know it's a boring group of people or the conversation is not going to go where I want it, I need to have that distraction to keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, not to be too impulsive. Yeah, you just find you gotta collect your own coping mechanisms,
Yeah.
right? And it's just like everybody's unique. Everybody has their own sets of challenges, and you got to figure out what works for you. And then when it works, you got to have the discipline to stick with what works. So like consistently this happens to me. Like literally, I told you about my 3-hour sprints.
Mhm.
The last 2 weeks were just not that productive. And what did I find? I was veering off my sprint method that I always use. I was like, oh,
Right.
I have the whole day open, so let me go slower, and I can go.
Oh,
Nope,
yeah,
does
yeah.
not work for me.
That's funny because I just realized that the other morning. I'm laying in bed longer in the morning because there's not as much stuff to do as much in the day. So I think I got enough time. And then my time blindness will probably catch me down with the time,
Yeah,
but I gotta keep that urgency somehow. But it's gotta be within a healthy realm because for 15 years I kept me ultra urgent. My
Hmm.
overscheduling, always on the go, but physically, there's no way you can physically keep that up or mentally either. So, oh, these are really good. So what I really like what she said is that these are actually nonverbals that are compared to the social norms, and they can be misunderstood as bad behavior or not normal behavior. And the other thing I really like, he says, it's actually more about the interpretations of the behaviors without context is actually the challenges that we run into. We don't,
Exactly.
not enough eye contact, or we fidget too much, or we step around from a meeting too much. And man, like I never thought of that. Watching yourself video, just so you understand these behavioral traits that you have that are not part of the social norm, and it's more about learning what they are so you can be more aware of them and but not get rid of them, but just so you can be able to express them, explain it better. And then your process and systems to reduce the impact of those behavior, I think is really cool and cool and nice to be aware of. Because
Yeah.
if you're aware, now you know, but you still need to do something about it. For me, awareness is active knowledge. So now that you know, being aware, you can do something about it. And what I found with my experience is once you explain it in a logical, non-labeling way, people are more receptive.
Yeah, most people go, "Oh, no problem. I
Yeah,
get it."
I get it now.
But if you stay quiet, they're going to make up all these other reasons for it. Like he's not interested in me, he's crazy, he's this, he's that. Da, 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 da. So you just kind of own it.
Yeah, actually, I had a buddy of mine call it out one time where somewhere he goes, "Oh, Andre's interest is peaked." I'm like, "How the hell do you know that?" I said, "Because you turned your ear towards us." So people do figure it out with time. So thank you, Blake. This is fantastic. So to me, what the listener has to take away from this is the interpretations of behavior without context is actually the challenge that ADHD brain and people have because they're judging our behavior without context. We just need to learn and understand how to communicate to people, how to communicate that to people effectively. And by that, you need to be aware of what they are, that's what your unique ones are. And Blake, thanks again for sharing your knowledge on this.
Thank you so much. Great questions. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And for you, the listener, what behaviors do you think you need to explain to your friends and family? Let me know at André at theimpulsivethinker.com. I'd love to hear what you thought of the discussion today, and where, Blake, one last thing, where can people find you? Because you got a lot of good things to say here.
Yeah, definitely check out nonverbalgroup.com and sign up for the newsletter. I do that every Monday, which has advice like this.
And Instagram? You see
Yeah,
there's-
Instagram is Blake_Eastman.
All right, we'll have that in the show notes too. Thanks again, Blake, and to you, the listeners, thanks again for learning with me. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.